How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GBNews.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GB News was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GB News exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends.
Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at.
Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs. Coming up tonight, the King has been to see the survivors of the synagogue terror attack. Meanwhile, Lisa Nandy says resources will be made available to police that Maccabi Tel Aviv match if it's decided it goes ahead. Your thoughts on that? And also tonight, there's been more criticism aimed at the grooming gang inquiry. Let's take a look at that. And migrant mythbusters have come under fire as perhaps being full of nonsense. And speaking of nonsense, finally, some sensible news. I like this one. The UK's biggest police force has said that they're going to stop investigating so-called non-crime hate incidents. Good. Also tonight, Reform UK have suspended the whip from 4 councillors after leaked meetings emerged. Let's take a look at that as well. All of that and lots more keeping me company. The head of policy for Reform UK is Youssef, and the Labour MP Barry Gardner. But before we get stuck in, let's give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Good evening, it's 1 minute past 6. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. And we start tonight with some breaking news. The Metropolitan Police will no longer investigate non-crime hate incidents, a spokesman has said. The move comes after it was announced today that comedian Graham Linehan would face no further action over 3 gender-critical tweets. The Met said that the decision to no longer investigate such incidents will provide clearer direction for officers. In a statement, the force said that Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley doesn't believe officers should be policing toxic culture war debates, with current laws and rules on inciting violence online leaving them in what he calls an impossible position. Non-crime hate incidents are incidents that do not count as crimes, but are perceived to be motivated by hatred towards certain characteristics, such as race or gender. Elsewhere today, a palace source has told GB News that allegations against Prince Andrew should be examined in an appropriate way. The Metropolitan Police is actively looking into the allegations that he asked his taxpayer-funded bodyguard to dig the dirt on his sex accuser, Virginia Giuffre. It follows revelations in her memoir alleging Andrew's team even tried to hire internet trolls to hassle her online. Today, Downing Street would not be drawn on whether Parliament should pass legislation to strip Prince Andrew of his titles. The Prime Minister's official spokesman said that the question of legislation was a matter for the palace in the first instance and that ministers support the judgment of the King regarding Andrew's titles. He denies all allegations. The King has visited a Manchester synagogue targeted in a deadly terror attack earlier this month. His Majesty was greeted by Rabbi Daniel Walker at the Heaton Park Hebrew congregation, where flowers and tributes now mark the spot of the deadly assault. 2 worshippers, Adrian Dolby and Melvin Kravitz, were killed when an armed attacker with a knife and fake suicide belt tried to storm the synagogue on Yom Kippur. 3 more people were seriously injured before police shot the attacker dead within minutes. Amazon says it's fixed the original problem that caused a major internet outage this morning, but that full recovery to all sites will take more time. More than 1,000 companies have been hit by the outage, affecting Amazon's cloud system. Apps including Snapchat, Duolingo and even UK banks like Lloyds and Halifax have all been caught up in the chaos. The web service said that they were dealing with significant error rates at one of its main data centres in the US. The outage has triggered a wave of complaints online, with users warning the internet has gone dark. And US President Donald Trump is hosting Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese at the White House. The 2 leaders have discussed AUKUS, the joint treaty between Australia, the US and the UK. The Australian Prime Minister said he's hoping to take the partnership to the next level. President Trump and Prime Minister Albanese also signed a critical minerals agreement and discussed military equipment. The US President went on to comment on China, saying that he expects to work out a fair trade deal with President Xi. Also during that press conference, President Trump said that he does not think Ukraine will win in its war with Russia. It comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will travel to London to attend a meeting on Friday of the Coalition of the Willing. Those are your latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Michelle.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Thank you very much for that, and hello, good evening to each and every one of you. The start of a new week already. Can you believe that? Time absolutely flies, doesn't it? I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got the Head of Policy for Reform UK, Zia Youssef, and I've got Labour MP Barry Gardner. Good evening to you, gents. You're both very welcome tonight. As, of course, each and every single one of you at home, tell me what is on your mind tonight. I'll tell you what's on my mind tonight. I feel like celebrating, quite frankly, because it's very rare in this job that I feel like common sense does indeed prevail. But great news coming up in the programme for you, because the UK's biggest police force have said that it's going to stop investigating so-called non-crime hate incidents. I really do feel that this is a blast of common sense, ladies and gents. You can join the conversation in all the usual ways, and don't you worry, I shall indeed get to that story. But before I do, of course, we're all familiar with the horrendous terror attack that took place in the Manchester synagogue. Well, today, the King actually paid a visit there. Met with many of survivors, did as you would expect him to do, looked at the flowers, played tribute and all the rest of it. It's very touching scenes for many people, and of course many of the stories that have emerged from that horrific terror attack are also very moving indeed. We continue to send our support to everyone that was affected that day. Now, meanwhile, while some of this was happening, Lisa Nandy, she was in Parliament today speaking out about a story that you'll all remember broke just before the programme here on Thursday last week. Aston Villa, of course, tweeted out saying that they were not going to welcome Maccabi Tel Aviv fans into that match. all hell broke loose, basically, as a result of that. People were absolutely furious, calling it anti-Semitic and so on and so forth. The Prime Minister spoke out about it. People were demanding that the entire match was actually cancelled as it went on. And Lisa Nandy today, she basically said that resources would be put behind that as much as possible if the decision to allow that match to progress was taken. Take a listen.
That they are not entitled to dictate who can participate in competitions, attend a football match or walk the streets for fear of threats or reprisals. Whatever your view on the events overseas, this is a fundamental principle that this government will fiercely defend. And let me be clear, this decision was not made in a vacuum. It's set against the backdrop of rising anti-Semitism here and across the world, and an attack on a synagogue in Manchester in which 2 innocent men were killed. And that this fundamental principle that nobody in our country will be excluded from participating in public life because of who they are must be upheld.
Well, of course, you might all be familiar with the fact that there was a derby, I think it was last night or over the weekend, that was cancelled between 2 separate Tel Aviv teams. One of them was Maccabi Tel Aviv, the local independent MP. He then spoke out saying this to Keir Starmer.
Contrary to Keir Starmer's disgraceful comment labelling our West Midlands Police and the Safety Advisory Group as anti-Semitic, this was never about religion. It was always about hooligans. Keir Starmer, you owe an apology to our Chief Constable and to all the others. Wait for my letter before action.
Right, there you go. Whistle-stop tour then, but now you're all up to speed. Zia Youssef, your thoughts on it all?
Well, the idea that hooliganism is the preserve of this one particular football club is clearly for the birds. I mean, as a football fan myself, I mean, if you're going to start taking this sort of action as a result purely of hooliganism, then, you know, we'd have a lot more matches banned. But clearly this is anti-Semitism. And, you know, I'm afraid, as Danny Kruger, our brilliant Reform MP, has just said, Reform are the only party who are not just going to bleat about this. If Reform win the next general election, Reform will bring the police under the auspices of politicians, quite rightly too, because there is a lot of unhappiness in this country about two-tier policing. At the moment, because of this operational independence thing, you have this situation where Labour, the Tories, everyone's bleating about it, saying we're deeply unhappy, but all are unwilling to take the step that is necessary, which is to say if the British people vote for a particular party with a clear line in its manifesto about such issues, we must bring the police forces we must make politicians accountable for what the police do. And I'm afraid we don't have that right now, as Danny has said in Parliament. Reform are the only ones. If you vote for Reform, you will get a change in the way policing is done so that policing is done in this country without fear nor favour.
Barry?
Look, I'd like to start by talking about the first part of what you said, and that was the visit of His Majesty the King to the synagogue.
Yeah.
And I was particularly struck by the words of Mr. Finlay, who was, you remember, the man who was shot accidentally by the police.
A police officer.
And he talked about how this past couple of weeks he's seen the worst and also the best of our society. He said, 3 weeks ago, I saw the worst of humanity, but since then, you do absolutely see the best, and there's a lot of good people out there. And I think the fact that the King went there and showed support for the community and for the synagogue was really important. And it's that uniting role that the monarch plays that I think is really vital. In relation to Maccabi, first of all, let me say that I am concerned by what Zia has just said, which is that there would be no independent police under Reform and that police would be brought under political control. That I think smacks of a totalitarian state. But focusing on the issue around Maccabi, of course, many football matches are cancelled because of the violence of fans. It's not the first time it's happened with Maccabi. It happened previously. You'll remember that in Amsterdam, actually, the mayor of Amsterdam said after the violence there in the match with Ajax last year, she said, I don't want those fans back in my city ever. They're not welcome here because of the violence that had taken place. So we do know that there are a number of football clubs that have got a very bad reputation for their away fans. And I think that what's happened yesterday in Tel Aviv, with the Tel Aviv police themselves saying that this was banned on the basis of violence and public disorder, it shows that actually the safety advisory group in Birmingham and the police in the West Midlands Police probably took the correct decision, because they had done their homework. They thought there was going to be violence, and they said that shouldn't happen.
So is that the policy of the Labour Party then? If there's ever any
clearly not. No, clearly not.
I mean, it should be banned.
No, absolutely not. You heard what Lisa Nandy said, and you know what the Prime Minister said last week about this being anti-Semitism. He was very much in favour of the game going ahead, and he was very much in favour of saying that
attacked Reform's position, saying that the way in which things like this happen, we must bring the accountability for these situations into the political realm. Are you basically just saying, you just said it was anti-Semitism, are you just saying the British people then should just tolerate this and just accept that?
Sorry, I didn't say that. I said that that's what the Prime Minister had said. And I disagree with the Prime Minister on this point, because I think actually that decision was taken in the full knowledge of what Maccabi fans have done and were likely to do. And I think that the event...
So there's lots of football clubs that come to the UK and have a terrible reputation for hooliganism, and they are not banned.
Actually, that's not the case. There are matches that have been banned before, many matches, and there's a number of clubs that are known for it. Turkish clubs are known. Some of the Turkish clubs are known for it as well.
And those Turkish clubs come here and play. They play in the Champions League.
No, not when there is a risk to public safety. And matches have been banned before. I mean, you'll remember the days, I'm sure, when some of our clubs in the UK were banned from Europe, from playing matches in Europe, because our fans could not be trusted in terms of public order. We went through that. English football had to crack down on those horrible fans who brought disrepute to the game. And it seems to me that if you have a club, or whether it's a national team or a club, where the fan base cannot be trusted to go to a foreign city and behave properly, but actually instigate riots, then those fans shouldn't be allowed.
Clear, though, you're saying that if there are people watching this at home who do believe this is an example of anti-Semitism, deeply disagree with the way policing is done in this country, there should be no way that they can affect change at the ballot box. Is that your position?
What I'm saying is I would be very reluctant to have the independence of the police, who assess things on the basis of information, overridden for political purposes. And I would have thought that Reform's position should be about the same.
Well, our position is that we shouldn't have anti-Semitism in our police, in the way that policing is done in this country.
Well, what do you think to it all? I will come on to policing a little bit more later on in the programme. I think this is great. I'm happy today, ladies and gents. That doesn't happen often when I start discussing the news, I can tell you. But the Met Police saying that they will no longer investigate non-crime hate incidents. I think this is a huge deal. We'll get into that one a bit later in the programme. I also want to talk to you about grooming gangs and a bit of a twist in the tale that happened there earlier on.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs Anchor with me, Michelle Dewberry. I've got Zia Youssef and also Barry Gardner alongside me. John says, Michelle, if it does remain the case that Maccabi fans are going to be banned, the whole game, he says, should be played behind closed doors. What do you think to that? Not sure, I must admit. Anyway, look, another story that we're passionate about in this country throughout now and across this channel, it's getting... how do we even call this anymore? But acknowledgement, if you would like, for the grooming gang victims. We focus on this a lot, but here is an update from Charlie Peters. Take a listen.
Over the summer, the government organised a survivor panel to engage with the Home Office as it launched its national inquiry into grooming gangs, recommended by Baroness Louise Casey in June, following her rapid audit of the process. Well, last night, one of the survivors on that panel, Fiona Goddard, dramatically resigned because, in part, she said that she was feeling silenced by the process. What GB News can reveal tonight is that ahead of that survivors panel meeting with two prospective chairs tomorrow, that not all of the members on the panel have been permitted to attend and ask questions. We can also disclose that the survivors on the panel have also been asked to send in their questions in advance to be shared to those prospective chairs, a former senior police officer and senior social worker. Now, I understand that the Home Office team working with the panel wanted those questions in advance to prevent duplication, but it has received quite a stern reaction from many of the victims on the panel speaking with the People's Channel, saying that they think it could allow some further insight and allow for preparation ahead of their questions being asked. We can also reveal that members of the panel have been given guidance on the sort of themes that their questions should be about. The guidance includes 4 bullet points on inclusivity, trust, transparency and balance. It also suggests questions on accountability and independence. And that is something raised by Fiona Goddard in her letter last night quitting this panel, and by many other survivors who've been speaking anonymously to GB News, because they are concerned that in this grooming gangs inquiry, there needs to be a focus on the police and social workers, and they have fears that if the chair is not a judge, then that could affect the independence of the probe. Well, we've also been carrying concerns throughout the last few weeks about fears also shared by survivors that they fear the scope of the inquiry could be expanded beyond grooming gangs. This is a difficult moment for the government as it continues to push to launch that national inquiry over 4 months since it was announced in June.
That's Charlie Peters for you there. This is not a great start, is it, Barry Gardner?
Look, the way in which it's important to get the confidence of all those who have been the victims is absolutely vital to the success of any inquiry. And you're right, it's not a great start that this young woman has come out and said she doesn't have that confidence. I noticed that what she said was that given that one of the people to chair the inquiry was from the police and one was from social services, because those bodies had been implicated, that's why she lacked confidence, rather than the individuals concerned. And of course, there is a deal of expertise that those individuals would have. And I think it is important to look at the individual's track record and whether they can be trusted. But I do understand why it might be that somebody who's been a victim says, look, I just can't, I can't countenance them leading the inquiry.
Zia?
Well, look, this was the most horrific scandal and cover-up, I would say, of my lifetime in this country. It is a stain on the conscience of this country. It is clear that the instruments of state that have most to be concerned about the potential findings of such an inquiry are, I'm afraid, the police who were involved at the time and social care. If you remember, there were these horrific testimonies where there were council workers going to the, and I quote, weddings, going to the weddings of underage children. So the idea that this government would put forward 2 potential chairs, one from with a background of policing and one with a background in social care, I'm surprised. Well, the tragic thing in many ways is I'm unsurprised because neither am I surprised by the fact that this, by Fiona Goddard's concerns about political interference, because let's be clear, nobody inside the Labour cabinet, nor the Prime Minister wanted this inquiry. They had to be dragged kicking and screaming. As a result, huge credit to Charlie, whom we just heard from, and people like Elon. Whatever people think about Elon, he did a huge amount to make sure this issue was in the public eye. And the fact now that we have this resignation already, before the inquiry has already even started, from a survivor who was supposed to be an important part of the inquiry, I'm afraid, as I said, on the one hand, I'm shocked by it. On the other hand, it is nothing less than we should expect from this. The fact that people like Jess Phillips, all over this Labour government, they did not want this inquiry because they know if a proper inquiry was done with no stone unturned, then there would be a even more horrific amount of stuff for us to have to digest.
In terms of who should lead the inquiry, do you accept that actually somebody like the 2 people who are put forward, who have experience of those organisations, who understand the PACE Act, the Proceedings and Criminal Evidence Act, who understand the way the police work, who understand the way social services work, that whoever leads the inquiry does need to have some sort of expertise in those areas? My question to you would be, who would you suggest, what sort of role would you suggest would be an appropriate person to head up the inquiry?
Let's be clear about this. Number one, let's not have it be somebody who is literally has a background, or sounds like has actually worked inside the very instruments of state that are most complicit, clearly, with an abundance of evidence already. That's what makes this inquiry so interesting, because there is already such a preponderance of evidence of malpractice. In fact, as we now know, there are serious allegations of actually serving police officers, not only turning a blind eye, but involving themselves in the rapes themselves, Barry. So how on earth can you seriously put to me this question that somebody with a policing background should take this over? I can name you any number of professions. How about a King's Counsel? How about a judge? There are many, many people. Here's whom it shouldn't be, as Ms. Goddard has made clear, somebody who has a background in the very instruments of state who, frankly, have a huge amount to answer for in covering up this. This is without a doubt the biggest stain on the conscience of instruments of state in this country in my lifetime, Barry.
Yeah, but to to say what you've said is to say that nobody from those organisations can be trusted. And in fact, we know that there are many good, really decent people in both the police force and in social services who have worked long and hard against this, who've tried to expose what's going on. So to tar them all with the same brush, I think is...
Are you telling me that King's Counsel couldn't lead this inquiry effectively?
No, I'm not saying that
right,
at
well,
all.
there you go.
Yeah,
End of conversation, end of discussion. The fact that this is even happening, and again, it's not just that. Ms Goddard has also made allegations of political interference, which are unforgivable, given Labour were dragged into this inquiry kicking and screaming. And if we do not get real answers, if we do not get a proper inquiry, then I'm afraid the concern, the scale of anger about this tragedy will continue to grow.
We all want to see a proper inquiry, and we want to see those who were responsible for this atrocity actually dealt with the full force of the law.
I've got to tell you, my ears work, ladies and gents, and I can hear many of you shouting at your TV sets when the question gets raised about who could lead these kind of inquiries. I can hear many of you shouting Maggie Oliver at your screens. I hear you. Anyway, look, the Home Office have said, yes, the abuse of children by grooming gangs is absolutely horrific. They say any suggestion that the inquiry has been watered down is completely wrong, and say that they are committed to delivering a robust inquiry that will get to the truth. And that they are working urgently to appoint the best chair to take things forward. They say essentially that they're not going to be providing a running commentary. So there you go. You can make of all of that, ladies and gents, what you will. Coming up, my favourite story, Met Police saying that they will no longer investigate non-crime hate incidents. I also want to take a look at some migrant myth-busting and Reform UK Kent Council as well. I'll see you in a minute.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's an unsettled picture across much of the Mediterranean over the next couple of days, with heavy showers around, particularly across northern parts of Spain and Portugal, southern parts of France, northern parts of Italy, perhaps even some snow over the Alps too. Southern parts of Italy, parts of Greece and northern parts of Turkey faring better in terms of some sunny spells, and temperatures quite widely in the high teens or low 20s for many, but with a bit more dry weather around as we head through the second half of the week. Those temperatures on the rise into the low, potentially mid-20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, as we go through the rest of today and into tomorrow, there will be some further showers, some further rain at times, but also a bit of dry weather for some. The big talking point, though, currently is the low pressure that's across us. It's this that's been the driving force for the heavy, thundery showers some of us have had today, and also those strong, gusty winds in places too. But a lot of that is easing as we go through this evening and overnight. Not turning completely dry, though. A few showery bursts of rain here and there, and some more persistent rain pushing in from western parts of Scotland. But there will also be some clearer skies around, and so although most towns and cities will hold up in double digits, where you get those clear breaks, temperatures could take a bit of a drop, particularly over some eastern parts of Scotland. Could see a touch of frost, maybe even some fog in some parts, around Aberdeenshire, for example. But elsewhere, quite a murky start to the day, quite grotty with some cloud, which could be quite low. There'll be outbreaks of rain, not especially heavy, but perhaps some heavier bursts across some parts of Northern Ireland. And then across much of England and Wales, yes, there will be some early brightness, some sunshine around for quite a few parts, particularly towards the east, but also some further showery rain. Now, the showery rain is not going to be quite as heavy as what we've seen through today, so less chance of seeing any hail, some lightning, some thunder, but nonetheless, it will be a bit damp at times, and perhaps the heaviest showers will be across parts of Scotland where they could merge into some longer spells of rain. Otherwise, there are actually a greater chance of seeing the sun compared to today, and with that and slightly lighter winds, for many it is going to feel a little bit warmer. Now, as we go through into Wednesday, actually through the bulk of the day, Wednesday's looking largely fine for most places. A few showers towards the northwest, but lots of dry weather. However, later on we are likely to see some very wet weather pushing into the south, and that takes us into a very unsettled day for many places, particularly across England and Wales on Thursday, with very strong winds and heavy rain.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A9 northbound before Inveralmond roundabout is partially blocked by a broken down vehicle. In Warwickshire, a collision on the M69 southbound between Junction 1 and the M6 has closed 2 lanes, causing 40-minute delays. Essex's A12 northbound saw a vehicle cross the central reservation between junctions 18 and 19, resulting in hour-long delays. The M25 anti-clockwise in Kent has congestion adding 20 minutes to travel time. And on the trains, Gatwick Express has no service, and there's disruption on Chiltern Railways between Stratford-upon-Avon, Dorridge and Birmingham Moor Street. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Head of Policy for Reform UK, Zia Youssef, and the Labour MP, Barry Gardner. A second survivor has also resigned from that panel. We were just talking to you about one before the break. A second one now has resigned. She says she's made the decision to resign with immediate effect. The final turning point for me, she says, was the push to widen the remit of the national inquiries in ways that downplay the racial and religious motivations behind our abuse. I echo what I said at the start of that segment. It's not going very well indeed at the moment, is it? Keep your thoughts coming in. But look, a leaflet has caught our eyes. It's been put together by 3 Labour police and crime commissioners in collaboration with the pro-migrant group, the North East Migration Partnership. They say it's a myth-busting fact sheet. You say they're talking basically rubbish. Zia Youssef, tell us more.
Well, in George Orwell's 1984, he famously talked about a ministry of truth. This is exactly now what we appear to be seeing from Labour. 3 police and crime commissioners from Labour, ostensibly spending taxpayer money, sending out propaganda to try to convince British people to not believe the things they can see with their very eyes. This leaflet makes the claim that there is, quote, no such thing as illegal migrants, there's no such thing as bogus asylum seekers, claims that people who come to the UK illegally to claim asylum have no idea about our welfare system. These are all demonstrably false statements, and British taxpayers are being asked not just to fund the invasion of this country, that is not hyperbole. North of 160,000 illegal migrants, most of them fighting-age men, have turned up on our beaches, Michelle, uninvited and illegally since 2018. Not only are they being asked to spend more than £4 billion a year on accommodating them and much, much more in other ways, they're also now being asked to fund propaganda from this Ministry of Truth, from these Labour police and crime commissioners, to basically convince people that illegal migration doesn't exist. Britain is fast developing into, sadly, this dystopian surveillance state. I'm extremely concerned about where this is going, and I think people should be absolutely furious. I could not believe this was real. I had to look at it many times over and really convince myself it was real. But sadly, I can tell people watching at home, this is real. Labour police and crime commissioners are sending out propaganda at taxpayer expense, claiming that there is no such thing as illegal immigration.
What's going on, Barry Gardner?
Well, I like the fact that Zia is talking about George Orwell in 1984, only minutes after having said that he wants to take the police under state control. But look, in respect of this sheet, it is a fact sheet. It's not a propaganda sheet. It's a fact sheet. It gives facts.
Is there really no such thing as illegal immigration, Barry?
Can I just...
Well, you claim that it's a fact sheet.
Sorry.
Well, you need to defend that statement because that's what it claims.
Zia, I allowed you to have your say. I'm sure
Barry.
You'll do the same courtesy. It says that the Office of Budget Responsibility estimates that the average migrant who moves to this country at the age of 25 will contribute £341,000 to the public finances over the course of their lives, which is actually more than a British citizen. It says that, in fact, various studies have found that neither asylum seekers nor other types of migrants could be linked to significant changes in violent crime, and that only 12% of prisoners are migrants. And that reflects the percentage of migrants in the population. So there's no evidence that they are in any disproportionate way introducing violence or crime into the country. They're the same as the rest of us, right?
But Barry, that's just not true. That's just not true.
You say it's not true,
Afghan nationals are 20 times more likely. Let's talk about government statistics. Afghan nationals are 20 times more likely to be convicted of a sex offence than British nationals. Explain that to me. Why is that not in this leaflet? And again, you're jumping around here. Explain to me how this myth-busting sheet, this myth-busting propaganda, claims that there is no such thing as an illegal migrant. Explain to me how you can justify that statement, please.
Well, the way in which that would be framed, I imagine, is because...
We don't need to imagine. I mean, it's a real thing. This isn't
I'm trying to explain it to you, Barry. And that is because, actually, in international law, the mode of transport by which you come here does not make you an illegal migrant. Right. As you well know, the previous government took a decision to say that it didn't matter whether you were fleeing persecution or not, but actually, if you came here by a small boat on the crossing, you were automatically considered illegal.
Barry, people at home can draw their own assessment on that. What about the no such thing as bogus asylum seekers?
You asked me...
That's obviously an absurd argument on its face. It's not even worth responding to because people watching at home can draw their own conclusions.
You asked me for an answer.
Explain to me then, what about the no such thing? Is there no such thing as a bogus asylum seeker? Barry, genuinely, look me in the eyes and tell me there is no such thing as a bogus asylum seeker.
I gave you the answer to your question.
Barry, is there no such thing? Barry, is there no such thing as a bogus asylum seeker?
There is such a thing.
Right,
as
in
somebody
that case,
who is... Sorry,
why is taxpayer money being spent on spreading falsehood under the guise of busting myths?
You always try and shift it. When I give you a proper answer to your question,
Barry,
which I did...
That was as far from a proper answer.
No, it was the answer to your question. And then you shift your ground as you always do.
Barry, here's the funny thing. If there's no such thing as an illegal migrant, then there must be no such thing as a legal migrant either. So basically, you're advocating no borders, right?
No.
If there's no such thing as an illegal migrant, are we agreed that there's such a thing as a migrant? Do we at least agree on this much?
Illegal asylum seeker, right? You're not illegal by the mode of transport by which you come here. If you come here to seek asylum, you can be found...
From France.
You can be found not to be a genuine asylum seeker, right? And that's what our courts do. And that's why it's important.
So is there such a thing as a bogus asylum seeker?
Let me finish answering your question
you're refusing
before
to answer
you
the question
shift your
because
ground yet again.
You are having to defend, as usual, the indefensible. British taxpayers' money is being spent on a leaflet that, again, they can go online. I encourage people sitting at home, because you might not actually believe this is real. I genuinely, Michelle, did not believe this was real for several hours.
These days. I mean,
and the fact that Labour police and crime commissioners, who one would assume they actually had some crimes to go deal with.
The fact that
they are claiming
that 12% of prisoners are immigrants, and that reflects the percentage of migrants in the population? Is it correct?
Here's what we know. There's north of 10,000 foreign nationals
you ask me all these questions, and I give you answers.
Should be deported.
I answer your questions here.
Okay, go on.
Answer mine, right? Is it correct that 12% of prisoners are immigrants, and that reflects the proportion of immigrants in the population? Is it correct that they, on average, contribute £341,000 to public finances, which is more?
That's
you
right.
think that's wrong?
The OBR has recanted its calculations around that because they've understood. They've now understood. First of all, the OBR can't even forecast next quarter's numbers, let alone trying to make assessments over the lifetime.
So you don't accept it?
Well, let's talk about the Boris wave. The Boris wave. No, I do not accept it.
And what about the percentage of prisoners?
What
about the percentage of prisoners?
Well, let's talk about those numbers.
Barry,
the OBR has recanted its numbers, but the OBR has recanted its analysis, withdrawn its analysis about the net economic contribution of migrants who have come to this country, because they now are realising that there is far more that they are claiming from the state than they are paying in. A big function of that was the Boris wave, where millions of people, 3.8 million people came here, half of whom have never worked and will never work, and they are a massive drain on the public purse.
And what about that 12% here? Before you run down the clock, as you always do, before you run down the clock, as you always try and do, answer the question, is the figure of 12% prisoners who are immigrants the same as the percentage of the population?
Who comes to the country
correct
illegally,
or not?
Do you think people who come to the country illegally
yes
commit
or
a
no,
crime
Zia?
it should not be considered in a different way by the British public, who are furious that our borders are being left underdefended, Barry?
Well, look, my favourite line on this leaflet...
Never an answer.
My favourite line on this leaflet is where it says, people seeking asylum don't come to the UK to claim benefits. Get this is my favourite line. Most know nothing about welfare benefits before they arrive. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that, ladies and gents, but I'll tell you what I do know, what I want to talk about, non-crime hate incidents. Finally, common sense has prevailed. The Met Police will stop investigating them. Good. Let's take a look at that after the break. I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Dewbs & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here to GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dewbs & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello everybody, Michelle Dewberry, Zia Youssef and Barry Gardner with you. Tool 7 David has said, Michelle, we're talking about the grooming gang investigation and who should lead it. You're putting forward Charlie Peters. I've got to tell you, I think he's a little bit busy with the day job, but keep your suggestions coming in now. 4 Reform UK councillors being suspended after it was leaked, what some people calling heated, council meeting. Let's take a listen.
Sometimes I will make a decision that might not be liked by everybody in the group. But I'm afraid you're just going to have to suck it up, OK? And my reply to that is...
We'll be briefed as it goes, yeah.
Paul, I'm going to mute you in a minute. Let me reply. We're running out of time.
Now, people are obsessing a lot about this. It won't surprise you. What's your reaction to it, Zia Youssef?
My reaction is a non-story. I mean, you know, the fact that there are groups of councillors meeting, and sometimes, somebody might raise their voice a bit. It's a non-story. The only reason anyone cares, the only reason people care about this, Michelle, is because all of a sudden the press appears to think is placing such an insane amount of scrutiny on reform councils. Over the last decade, there have been 90 councils that have raised council tax by more than 5%, not 5% or more, by more than 5%. Half of those are Labour councils, another 35 are Tory councils. And, the number of councils, let's talk about Thurrock, that not only bankrupted itself, but then took 600 million quid of central government money, right? Let's talk about Croydon, let's talk about Slough, regeneration, 309 million pounds. This was a Labour-run council, went into bankruptcy, spent 309 million quid on regenerating the Whitgift shopping centre, and the whole thing had to be thrown in the bin because of incompetence. The British taxpayers had to pay huge amounts of money because budgets had not been balanced. And what Reform are doing is actually caring about balancing the budget. The fact that a difficult conversation has to be had as a result of that, and the fact that Reform is willing to say, listen, we need to have unity inside our councils, should not be a surprise to anybody.
Ari?
Well, look, it is a bit sort of Jackie Weaver, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit sort of like that parish council incident where they showed it and everybody had a good laugh. But these people are talking about millions of pounds of public money. And it's important that they are able to come around a budget that is going to be best for the people of Kent. And the idea that they're fighting like rats in a sack, I think, will cause consternation to the people of Kent. Zia says, well, it's an insane amount of scrutiny. No, not really, because, as I say, it is millions of pounds, but also Reform are claiming that they want to form a government, even though they've only got, 5-6 MPs. And therefore, it's important that there is that sort of scrutiny, because this is showing you what Reform might look like in government. And on the basis of what we've seen, the clip we've seen, and the sort of noises that are coming out from there, it looks pretty chaotic.
Do you think one clip is going to be representative of an entire set of 10 councils? I mean, again, let's talk about scrutiny is fine, no issue with scrutiny. The insane, overzealous and disproportionate scrutiny is what the problem is. Let's talk about Birmingham. Labour-run council Birmingham bankrupted itself and needed a huge central government bailout. As we speak, the bins are still piling up. The quality of life for people is appalling. That is a Labour council. Barry, I put it to you, if we had recordings, my God, the highlights reel of those conversations between councillors, I'm sure we'd all enjoy watching. The reality is 90 councils over the last decade have raised council tax by more than 5%. Half of those were Labour councils.
You are a master, Zia, a master of deflection.
How is that deflection? That is holding you to account. It's holding Labour to account for its appalling record of local government. That's before we even start.
That's it. Talk over me as always. OK? Any time Reform comes under a bit of close scrutiny, any time there's a criticism of Reform, immediately you switch it to something else. Look, can't you just have the decency to say they behaved badly, they've been disciplined for it, and we're trying to get them to get their act together? That's the adult thing to say, is it not? You have disciplined them. You could at least acknowledge it.
I'd discipline them as well if there was leaking my meetings. I could tell you that for free. Also, just to give you a little bit of context, ladies and gents, just in the last few days alone, Bristol Labour councillor suspended over a racist comment. Lambeth councillor suspended after being charged with sexual assaults and exposures and so on and so forth. I mean, what goes on, ladies and gents, behind closed doors when it comes to some of our councillors? I dread to think. But look, my favourite story of the night, I can't leave you without getting stuck into this one. Non-crime hate incidents. I mean, why these things were ever even a thing in the first place is beyond me. But anyway, good news. It's nice to leave you with a note of positivity. The Metropolitan Police have said that they are not going to investigate non-crime hate incidents anymore because they want to, quote, provide clearer direction for officers. Good. These things were so pathetic and misused. It was unbelievable. Anyway, do you celebrate this? See yourself?
Well, I'm not celebrating it. Look, it's a step in the right direction. It's one police force, and all they're saying is they're not going to investigate them. They need to be abolished altogether. Michelle, we shouldn't forget, as awful as this Labour government are, they're not going to do away with them. It was the Tories under whom this proliferated, this idea of non-crime hate incidents that have been weaponised to the nth degree. This all happened under the Tory government. Exactly the people now who are now, banging their, stamping their feet, claiming that this is all appalling stuff. So, look, it's a step in the right direction. I'm certainly not celebrating there. They need to be abolished altogether.
The police are there to prevent and detect crime, not to prevent bad behaviour. We may all say that bad behaviour is wrong. We may all dislike what people say and do, but if it's not a crime, the police should not be involved in it.
In case you're wondering, what is a non-crime hate incident? It's acts that are perceived to be motivated by hostility or prejudice towards people with certain characteristics such as race or transgender ideology. You will all remember Graham Linehan, of course. He was arrested at the airport, wasn't he, because of tweets that he had put out. We see so many examples of this. This is why I'm celebrating this, because I hope, and maybe I'm being slightly optimistic, but I hope that actually this might be the start of a sea change, Zia, where actually we return to policing things that really matter within society and not what some random person has tweeted and seen a disproportionate police response.
The reason I'm less optimistic than you about that, and again, I welcome it as a step in the right direction, right? That is a good thing. But the reason I'm less optimistic is my understanding of Mr. Linehan's arrest was not to do with a non-crime hate incident. It was to do with malicious communications, and he was arrested on the basis that he was under suspicion of actually having committed a crime. So I actually think what this is, look, as you exactly said, it is something that has been, sadly, weaponised by minorities and particularly, let's be clear, activists within minority groups in order to try to affect change from majority groups in a very underhand and terrifying way, frankly. They proliferated under the Tories. They need to be done away with.
Well, what do you make to it all, ladies and gents? Because this is an issue. I'm just looking at the inbox now. So many of you get in touch with this one. And it feels to so many people like thought crimes have been taken so much more seriously than actual crimes. Many people get in touch as well, because this affects the impression that people have on frontline police officers, Barry. People now, frontline police officers that risk their life, they run towards danger every day, they get smeared because of this management direction of travel. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Met has come out and said what it has, which I absolutely welcome. We want officers to be engaged in preventing initially, then detecting and arresting criminals, right? So the idea that you are, policing bad behaviour per se is entirely wrong, and it opens the police up to subjectivity. And I'd only pick up one thing that Zia said, and that was that it was minorities. Actually, protected characteristics aren't necessarily for minorities.
Well, there you go. What do you make of it all? Phil, I dread to think what you're tweeting, my friend. He says he's going to sleep better tonight after this information from the Met Police Office. Look, do you know what? I'll take it where I can get it. I feel optimistic. That's how I'm going to end the show tonight. Thanks, gents. Thanks to you at home for watching. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. Graham Linehan interview coming up later as well. Good night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, as we go through the rest of today and into tomorrow, there will be some further showers, some further rain at times, but also a bit of dry weather for some. The big talking point, though, currently is the low pressure that's across us. It's this that's been the driving force for the heavy, thundery showers some of us have had today, and also those strong, gusty winds in places too. But a lot of that is easing as we go through this evening and overnight. Not turning completely dry, though. A few showery bursts of rain here and there, and some more persistent rain pushing in from western parts of Scotland. But there will also be some clearer skies around, and so although most towns and cities will hold up in double digits, where you get those clear breaks, temperatures could take a bit of a drop, particularly over some eastern parts of Scotland. Could see a touch of frost, maybe even some fog in some parts, around Aberdeenshire, for example. But elsewhere, quite a murky start to the day, quite grotty with some cloud, which could be quite low. There'll be outbreaks of rain, not especially heavy, but perhaps some heavier bursts across some parts of Northern Ireland. And then across much of England and Wales, yes, there will be some early brightness, some sunshine around for quite a few parts, particularly towards the east, but also some further showery rain. Now, the showery rain is not going to be quite as heavy as what we've seen through today, so less chance of seeing any hail, some lightning, some thunder, but nonetheless it will be a bit damp at times, and perhaps the heaviest showers will be across parts of Scotland where they could merge into some longer spells of rain. Otherwise, there are actually a greater chance of seeing the sun compared to today, and with that and slightly lighter winds, for many it is going to feel a little bit warmer. Now, as we go through into Wednesday, actually through the bulk of the day, Wednesday's looking largely fine for most places. A few showers towards the northwest, but lots of dry weather. However, later on we are likely to see some very wet weather pushing into the south, and that takes us into a very unsettled day for many places, particularly across England and Wales on Thursday, with very strong winds and heavy rain.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the A9 northbound prior to Inveralmond roundabout, a broken down vehicle partially blocks the road. The M48 faces a 7.5-ton weight restriction for heavy goods vehicles, effective until further notice. Meanwhile, travellers on the M25 anti-clockwise between Junction 3 and Junction 2 are experiencing congestion with delays stretching to 20 minutes. On the trains, the Gatwick Express currently has no service. Chiltern Railways has disruptions between Stratford-upon-Avon, Dorridge and Birmingham Moor Street. Remember to plan your journey accordingly. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's 2 weeks remaining and